All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Descussions, the podcast where we explore the intersections of education, technology, and innovation to spark ideas and conversations that drive meaningful change. I'm Brad Denison, your host and EdTech enthusiast, here to share insights and strategies that are shaping the future of learning. Today, I am joined by Janet Kamps, Director of the Office of E-Learning at Del Mar College. Janet brings a wealth of experience in online education, having navigated the journey from faculty member to administrator. Her background provides a unique perspective on how institutions can create meaningful, sustainable approaches to accessibility in digital learning. In this episode, we're going to dive into the institutional structures for accessibility, how colleges can move beyond compliance and towards building truly inclusive learning environments. We'll start by exploring Janet's own journey through education, from her time in the trenches as faculty to her current role, and then transition into discussing her experiences with institutional approaches to accessibility. And then finally, we'll break down how educators and administrators can take on the task of improving accessibility at their own institutions. So I hope you take something valuable from today's lesson. Let's dive in. So first up, before we get started, Janet, is there anything you'd like to talk about or tell us about yourself or your role at Del Mar College, or maybe even just a fun story about Corpus Christi?
Well, I have to say that Corpus Christi is just one in a long line of institutions I've been at, schools, various schools. I have to say that Del Mar College, this is the first time I've ever lived on the Texas coast. And I can look out my office window and see the seagulls. That is a first for me. That's not something that most people have the opportunity to do. Being at Del Mar College is kind of like a full circle for me in terms of my higher ed experience, because I did start out at a community college here in Texas, and now I have come full circle. I worked at Texas A&M University, and then I moved over to Stephen F. Austin State University, and now I'm at Del Mar College. At all of those institutions, I was very focused on accessibility and the need for accommodations, and just going beyond that to just good common sense and honoring our students as well as our faculty as well. So that's kind of in terms of my higher ed background. That's how I come to be at Del Mar College.
No, I like it. And you've definitely, from just looking at like the internet trail that you've got, you've had an interesting career path from working directly with students as faculty and now shaping online learning at the institutional level. And you touched base on it a little bit about your journey, your background there, but can you walk us through that journey a little more? What experiences in the classroom shaped your approach to e-learning and accessibility?
So going way back to the 80s, that's when I started in teaching actually high school Spanish. And that was a time when, at that point, the Rehabilitation Act of 1973 was in full force, and we heard about the Americans with Disabilities Act that probably would soon be coming. So of course I was very focused on making sure all of my students had the accommodations they needed, and also helping them realize that when they go to college, that there would be perhaps not as much support as they perhaps wanted, but that how to talk to people and say, hey, this is how I work, this is how I function, this is a diagnosis, and how to make that transition. So even back then, I was very focused on the higher ed portion of accessibility. So and then I was on committees, and I did some extra formal training and those kinds of things to support the accessibility needs of the school, but also of students as well, and fellow faculty. A few years later, higher ed lured me away, and that's when I went to higher ed. They're just, for anyone who might be wondering, the accessibility requirements and compliance is much, much higher at the K-12 level than it is in higher ed. So that's just a data point right there. In higher ed, I immediately started running into questions from faculty about Well, what do I do with this? This publisher says it is accessible, but my student says it isn't. And that's where I started getting into the technological side of things, assistive technology and so forth. And I'll say right now, I am not an expert on the assistive technology. I am a technology nerd. So of course I wanted to get in and dig in and learn and so forth. That actually meant that I was talking with some students as well, because they're the ones who are using the assistive technology, and each person is different. And so I kind of started creating some threads of experience for myself. I didn't really realize it at the time, but having that student component, I think we'll talk about that a little more in detail, but having that student component in this is very important. Because it brings their stakeholders, and it brings their stakeholder perspective. So accessibility, sometimes it's like, oh yeah, we'll make the decision. Yeah, this will be it, but that may not work for a particular student. And they are still covered by the Rehabilitation Act and ADA. So plus they're human beings, and we need to we need to honor the human being.
And you're talking about the journey. When you talk about the technology in the classroom, when I started here at the college, the Mainland, 15 years ago, and I got my first ADA request to go set up something physical in a classroom, right? That was my first exposure to ADA assistance in the classroom, right? And so now here we are in a similar role to you as a director over distance education at the college. Accessibility takes on a whole new level of importance. It's not a specific individual, it's not a specific classroom, it's not a specific location. It's what can we all do to improve accessibility for all users. And so I really appreciate that perspective where you're coming at from there. So Janet, I guess next kind of talking point here is every institution seems to tackle accessibility differently. Some take that more proactive, structured approach, while others react when challenges arise. Based on your experience, what does an effective institutional strategy for accessibility look like? And what are some common pitfalls that schools should avoid?
I think that primarily, first it has to, whatever endeavor and what that looks like has to work for the context of each particular institution. In some cases, this may be change management, and there may be some shifts that need to happen. Some institutions, have talked to a few folks, and they're already doing a good job at making sure everyone is supported. Obviously, involving the stakeholders, and again, including students, the students have to have a voice. I mean, this affects them directly. Also, any faculty that may have needs for accessibility. Having their perspective is also invaluable. I've worked with all kinds of issues, from dyslexia to color blindness to full blindness with faculty as well. So we have to remember that when we're doing faculty support, especially when it involves accessibility matters, everything has to be accessible, and that sometimes those two groups get left out. It has to be the endeavor itself to become more perhaps aware or more supportive of accessibility needs. That has to be integrated vertically and laterally. So, and that kind of includes involving stakeholders, because if you have administration as well as faculty and students, that's going to get the vertical. The lateral is also important. Who is it that has to do anything to do with students and accessibility? Well, at an institution of higher ed, that's going to be a lot of people. That's going to be counseling, obviously, the digital learning, distance education, whatever office that may be, whatever the name it may be, and then also faculty. That may not have any kind of leadership role. That's the vertical and lateral integration in terms of any endeavors or ongoing support for accessibility needs. I think for it's very tempting. It's just human nature. We want to do just enough to check the boxes so that we're okay for whatever, an audit or reaffirmation of accreditation or anything like that. But it is important to keep in mind that this endeavor is to benefit the students. And in benefiting students with accessibility needs, you also benefit students that don't have accessibility needs, and I'll get into that in a little bit. Universal design is in there big. And something that I see at a lot of institutions is, it's all responsibility is all on the faculty. And yes, we have an Office of Disability Services. So it's tempting to just say that and not go any further. And some institutions will, excuse me, they will go as far as saying, well, it's the faculty's responsibility to learn everything they need to know on their own, because that's just professional development. It comes with teaching. And, there is, yeah, if you look at legislation and so forth, I suppose you could get away with saying that. But when it really comes down to it, it really needs to be an institutional support, because we are talking about accreditation, which is institutional, all the way down to, okay, the student's trying to see what's going on in this chart, but there's no explanation of the chart, and all they can see is that there's a graphic there, for example. So it needs to be a vertical and lateral. Sometimes I think in pictures, and sometimes I think of this as a kind of a mesh, to where people aren't slipping through the cracks. It's just something that is, it's inherent in the matrix, or the mosaic, maybe I should say. I don't know, this is technology, we'll say matrix of the of the institution.
I like it. And so I guess, like, when we're taking into consideration things like, well, let's talk about accessibility and universal design and incorporating all those stakeholders, and not just faculty, but our students as well. You're talking about almost, it sounds like what I would see as a project management plan for launching a new initiative at college, but you're talking about just trying to catch people up on something that's been existing, right? And I think that's what is really interesting about this topic, is that I don't know if everybody fully understands accessibility. And so, just to touch base for everybody, you're listening to DE Discussions. Right now, I'm talking with Janet Kamps. She's director of the Office of E-Learning at Del Mar College, and she is sharing her wealth of knowledge on her journey through education as both a faculty member all the way up to administrator, as it relates to accessibility in higher learning. And so, one of the biggest hurdles, Janet, in accessibility isn't just policy, as I was talking about. Sometimes it's just getting it adopted, getting buy-in, getting everybody on board for all the different constituency groups. So how do you help faculty understand the importance of accessibility beyond just that checkbox, beyond just compliance? And have you had any strategies at Del Mar College or at other institutions that have helped get faculty engaged in this work?
Yeah, I think that most folks know that any kind of change can be difficult for folks, and accessibility is no different. There have been some things that I've found success with, and that I've actually provided sessions to faculty on what it's like to experience learning material when there is an actual a barrier. And so I've done the whole thing with the goggles and having them try to read things, and then they have to listen to a recording that's going at double speed, and things like that, and using gloves and having to work with things, but the dexterity just isn't there, and that's just one small thing. But then there are other things, and I've held events where there are students, especially events with panels, student panels as well as faculty panels, with folks who have experienced accessibility one way or another. I've had faculty members present and even be a regular part of ongoing faculty professional development, who bring the perspective of being a faculty member who, also has significant accessibility needs. And so that's eye-opening for a lot of people. And whether it's a part, I will also say that in this whole endeavor to raise the awareness of accessibility, an institution's teaching and learning center, whatever it may be called, hopefully an institutions will have something like that, formal or informal. But hopefully that organization, that group, could be looped into the adoption process. So one thing with that adoption process that I found has been most successful is providing universal design for learning. That name has undergone some changes over the years, so I'll call it universal design right now. Even though in the early years that was mainly for physical things like buildings and so forth. But looking at universal design with accessibility as a subset. And one of the reasons, there are several reasons, I think, some of them are very personal to people, but one of the reasons I think offering training and professional development on universal design for learning can be very successful is because that is easily in the minds of faculty and those of us who think curriculum and instruction like 80% of the time. Universal design is very closely linked to crafting the learning environment for your students, whether it's face-to-face, online, video conference, however that may be, whatever that may look like. Having different means of providing information, different means of being able to take in the information, and different means of, for example, students being able to show that they've got the learning. That gives students, not just students with accessibility needs, an edge, but also all students, because it can play to their strengths rather than students having to go over barriers and try and figure something out before they can actually get to the learning and the producing whatever it is that they need to create, whether it's a project of some sort. With accessibility as a subset, it becomes very obvious why accessibility is a need. Accessibility, providing for that is a need, because there are some students in higher ed that they don't want to declare. Now, within higher ed, if they want accommodations and they have a diagnosis, then in order to be sure that they receive accommodations, they do need to register. They do need to go through their Office of Accessibility Services, or whatever it may be called, in order to get those. However, if a faculty member does provide a learning environment that already has universal design for learning in the instruction, then it's going to be a much less of a workload for the faculty member to accommodate the more common accessibility needs. And honestly, if we're just being honest here, if they're complying with the law, they're going to be there anyway. And that kind of talks to creating instruction in the first place. Doing it with accessibility, doing it with universal design for learning, because if you structure your online course, or whatever the modality may be, if you structure that in advance with universal design principles in it, then you're already ahead. You're already going to be taking care of those compliance matters. You're already going to be ahead. And if you get a student who needs a particular accommodation that is one of the more statistically common ones, then you're that far ahead already. I can't tell you how many times I've had a student call me, how many times a faculty member has called me 3, 4, 5 days after the semester has started, and they say, "Oh, hey, I just got a student who says that he can't see anything, and now I have, 25 videos, and I need to get them taken care of. Who do I talk to get that done?
Right.
And yeah, there are some, and I will say, for those institutions who have the money to be able to have those solutions, that is
Mm,
amazing. That is wonderful. That's for a lot of us, that's not reality. So
right.
that goes right back to, that is where faculty have the responsibility, and if you start off the semester with having provided for universal design for learning, or at the very least accessibility compliance, then you're that much further ahead. And
Well,
hopefully, yeah, statistically, the most common accessibility needs are going to be either partially or fully taken care of already.
so last year, the Department of Justice, Department of Education, they started to update some expectations for online content, for online learning, but also for just online perusing in general as it relates to UDL even. What do you have as advice for institutions that are just taking steps to get on that road to catching up to what was expected or what is coming with changes for ADA expectancies? What is one actionable step that they can take today to help start making a lasting impact for accessibility?
I'll do 1.5 things.
That works.
So the first thing is to know exactly what is expected, which does include looking at other sources that, maybe national organizations that provide some interpretation and provide networking. So knowing what's expected, what's required, what other institutions are doing around any particular change that's upcoming, that's a major one, because and then here's the 0.5, you have to know where you are already. You have to find out what's available in your institution. And that kind of sounds, that would maybe sound funny to folks, but well, it's your institution, you should already know. Well, ideally, yes, but reality is we all have far more work than we can get done in an
Mhm.
8-hour day. So, talking to the disability office, the accessibility office, ours here is called accessibility and advocacy, which I love that term. We got away from the disability
Yeah.
services name. So I thought that was wonderful. And finding out, what do they need? What do they really need to provide support for students? Talk to faculty and the Teaching and Learning Center, whatever that may be called. What do they need? What do they see? What do they see as problems? What do they see as solutions? Um, Getting information from students. What do they see? What do they need? Those kinds of things. And so that can kind of think, oh, well, we'll just throw out a survey and do a needs assessment to these different people groups, which is great. I think that's amazing. But it's all about the human, and that's the human who provides the services. That's the human who takes advantage of the services. And I say that not in a bad way. I mean, it's there. They should be able to use them if they need them. So knowing what's offered currently at one's institution, and then after that, knowing or for example, providing some events, asking what would happen. And by event, I don't mean some glitzy thing. I mean meaningful things that involve people, panel discussions, interviews, maybe, whatever it may be, highlighting just here and there, and then putting those in an institutional newsletter, or in an institutional blog, or on social media. Those kinds of things go a long way. One of the institutions that I was at previously has a good reputation for being accessibility friendly to those students who need those services. And that was actually that was it was a wonderful experience, because I kind of led that charge, and we really brought humans to the forefront, and that's what it was all about, bringing humans to the forefront and saying, hey, we can all do the work on this together. Administrative support obviously is critical. I did not have a budget for that, and I did that over years. So that was, you don't have to have a lot of money, and that's an important part here. You don't have to have a lot of money. It is important to get supervisor approval for any of these things. But even there, let's say one is an instructional designer or the newest hired instructional design specialist or technologist. You can pick up the phone. You don't have to go rogue. You can pick up the phone and call your accessibility office and say, "Hey, I'm new here. I just want to find out what do students have to go through there? Can I come and visit and see your place? Can I see your testing areas? Can I see the assistive technology you have?" That's something right there. And then in conversations with faculty, just dropping a little thing in here and there about, hey, yeah, and for accessibility, then they would probably need something like this, and then go on with whatever the topic is at hand. And I can tell you that when administrative support is visible, that really supercharges things, even if there isn't a lot of money involved, or any money involved. Just administrative support is critical. It raises the awareness. They can sponsor events that, maybe don't have food, not in a, fancy place, no money expended, but maybe the CAO or the provost shows up and says, "Hey, this is really important, and I'm thrilled to see that you all are here today." And just something as simple as that. Doesn't take money, just takes 15, 20 minutes of time, perhaps. So yeah, those are some things that an institution kind of can take a look at, because that was kind of a broad spectrum.
Yeah. We could do an entire 30 minutes, I think, on that question alone, honestly. And that's good, though, because, Janet, you have been a wealth of information. I hope I can have you come back on the show. But before we wrap up today, is there anything else you'd like to add, or any final thoughts regarding accessibility in higher ed, or just education in general?
Yeah, I think going back to that theme of it's all about the human, and that includes you, whoever you may be. When we think about faculty and students, both of those have the letter U in them, and it really is. It's all about you and you and you and you. So I think although I don't hear it a lot, I think the golden rule, that's a golden rule because it's all across the world, treat others like you want to be treated. So today you might not have an accessibility need, but tomorrow, next month, 10 years, you may have one. So just keep that in mind. And it is a very positive thing, a very powerful thing. We all want our students to succeed, and accessibility is one of the ways we can help them succeed.
I love it. It's all about you and you and you. You keep that in mind, everybody listening. It is about you. So today, DE Discussions, Brad Denison, I've been chatting with Janet Kamps. She's Director of Office of E-Learning at Del Mar College. This has been absolutely wonderful, Janet. Thank you so much. I hope you had a great time with this, and that you're hopefully you're as excited to come back as I am to have you on the show again.
This has been great. Thank you so much, Brad, for having me.